All right, we're about to dive into a question, a really big one, that people have been wrestling with for, well, centuries. It's something that really gets to the heart of how we trust each other, how we even build our societies.
So, here it is. Are religious people moral? Seems like a simple question, right? But oh, the answer is anything but. For most of human history, this has just been a matter of opinion, of debate. But today's different. We're going to see what 60 years of actual scientific data has to say about it.
And look, this isn't just some philosophical thought experiment. The stakes here are incredibly high. Just think about this. A huge international survey from 2020 found that almost half the people on this planet believe you have to believe in God to be a good person. That belief, it shapes everything. Who we vote for, who we hire, who we trust as our neighbors.
You know, you can go all the way back to ancient Greece and find people arguing about this. Fast forward, you've got thinkers like William James saying, yeah, religion helps us fight our selfish impulses. But then you've got others, like David Hume, who worried it could actually be a bad thing for morality. The arguments have been going back and forth forever, but the hard evidence? It's always been kind of all over the place. Until now.
So to finally get past all the talk, a group of scientists took on this monumental task. What they did was gather pretty much every piece of research from the last 6 decades and combine it all into one giant study. It's called a meta-analysis. The whole point was to see if, in all that scientific noise, they could find one clear, definitive signal.
Okay, now we're getting to the evidence. And let me tell you, the scale of this thing is, well, it's just staggering. Before we even get to the results, you really have to get a sense of the sheer amount of data we're talking about.
First up, the number of people. We're talking about data from over 800,000 individuals. 800,000 from all over the world, all walks of life.
And those 800,000 people, their data came from 237 completely separate independent studies. That's a huge number of different research projects.
And this wasn't just a quick look at one point in time. Nope. This research stretches from the 1960s all the way to today. Think about all the cultural changes that happened in that time. This data covers it all.
So, after all that, after crunching the numbers from hundreds of thousands of people across decades of research, what was the verdict? What did they find? Is there a real, measurable link between being religious and being a good person?
The big number that came out of all this was R equals 0.13. Now, in statistics speak, that's what we'd call a small but significant positive link. What it means in plain English is that, yeah, on average, as someone's religiosity goes up, their good or pro-social behavior goes up too. But, and this is key, not by a lot.
So there you have it, a small, consistent link. Case closed, right? We can all go home? Well, not so fast. Because when the researchers decided to dig just one level deeper, they found something that turned this whole simple answer completely on its head.
It turns out the data wasn't telling one clear story. It was actually telling 2 completely different stories. And which story you heard depended entirely on how you were measuring goodness.
See, when scientists try to measure something like goodness, they basically have 2 tools in their toolbox. The first is easy. They just ask people. They use surveys with questions like, how often do you volunteer? Or did you donate to charity this year? That's what people say. The second tool is a bit trickier. They bring people into a laboratory and watch what they do in a controlled setting. That's what people actually do.
And this is where things get really interesting. Look at this chart. It shows the massive difference between the two. When you just look at what people say about themselves, that correlation we talked about is 0.15. But when scientists actually watch what people do in the lab, that connection just plummets. It drops by more than half, down to a teeny tiny 0.06. That's barely a link at all.
So, this is the big mystery we need to solve. Why the huge gap? Why does the connection between being religious and being good seem so much stronger when we're just listening to what people say, compared to when we're watching what they do? What is going on here?
Okay, so the researchers didn't just leave us hanging. They came up with 3 main theories, 3 possible explanations that could solve this whole measurement mystery. And each one gives us a totally different lens for looking at this.
All right, here are the 3 big ideas. First, maybe the lab tests themselves are just broken.
Second, it could be a psychological quirk we all have called the self-enhancement effect. And third, there's a trickier one they call the tautological problem. Let's break them down.
Okay, theory number one. This one says, hey, maybe the problem isn't the people, it's our experiments. You know, these lab tests can be pretty weird and artificial, like playing a computer game where you share fake money with a stranger. This theory argues that's just not how real-world religious kindness works. That happens through things like church fundraisers, community service, that kind of organized group effort, which a lab just can't measure.
Now, theory 2 points the finger at our own psychology. It's about a thing called the self-enhancement bias. Basically, we all like to see ourselves in a positive light, wearing rose-colored glasses, you could say. This theory suggests that maybe more religious people have a stronger tendency to do this. So it's not that they're lying on the surveys, it's that they genuinely see themselves as being more moral and helpful than they might actually be.
All right, this third theory is the real mind-bender. What if the link we see in the survey data is just an illusion? This theory proposes that there's a third thing we're not seeing, a certain personality type. Let's call them self-enhancers. These are people who just generally like to present themselves in the best possible way. So when they fill out a survey, they're more likely to say they're religious, and they're more likely to say they're a good person. The connection isn't actually between religion and morality, it's between this personality type and how they answer questions about themselves. Kind of tricky, right?
Okay, so we've climbed this mountain of 60 years of research. We've stared into this deep measurement mystery at its core. So what does it all mean? What are the big takeaways here? Where do we land?
Here's what it all boils down to. First, yes, there's a small, positive link between being religious and doing good things. But, and this is the really important part, that link is super fragile. It all depends on how you measure it. The real headline here isn't the link itself. It's the huge, mysterious gap between what people say and what people do. And that gap could mean our lab tests are flawed, or that our own psychology is playing tricks on us. Or, most likely, it's a little bit of both.
And that leaves us with one last really big question. This whole journey through the science has uncovered a massive challenge. If you can't always trust what people say about their own goodness, and you can't be sure that what they do in a lab reflects real life, then how do we ever really measure something as deep and complicated as being a good person?